Hello, welcome back to the Shooter Project. I'm going to be going over, hopefully you got some good information out of Dr. Bresney in the last few videos. I'm going to be going over how to add things to our Shooter Project. So we're going to be adding a bunch of stuff today. We're going to be adding explosions, we're going to be adding sounds, and we're going to be adding player health. So remember when we left off, this is where we were at. I'm just going to go ahead and run it. We could shoot things. Enemies come at you at a fairly fast rate. It's kind of hard to, if you're going to shoot all of them, it's a little bit challenging. Not too bad, but just kind of have to move in the right order, and you can shoot them all. So not bad, but definitely in all games it's a fine mix of balances, of checks and balances in terms of rewards, challenges, and that kind of thing. So we want to give a little player reward if we shoot down these enemies, and we're going to do that in the form of explosions. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same kind of technology that we used before with the animated sprites, kind of mixed with, remember, that sprite technology we had from the animation class, mixed with the list mechanics we used for the enemies, for example, because we're going to basically want to create an explosion on the screen and then have it go away rather quickly. So, first things first. First things first, we're going to add a list of explosions to game1.cs. So that's pretty easy to do. I'm going to go ahead and add an explosion section. We're going to call this so what we need is a explosion texture, which will be, and Microsoft has provided us with such a thing. We've got this explosion texture PNG here that shows the full explosion going from start all the way to finish. And each one of these is just going to be a basic sprite animation like we've already coded for animation in animation.cs. And we're going to basically have a list of these animations, and those are going to happen over time. Now in initialize, we're going to create this new list. So go down to initialize. It's going to be our explosions section, and add explosions new list animation. And that will give us a list. This gives us basically a list of animations. So here's our animation, here's our list, and this is just the syntax we need to create that new list of animations. And that's going to create basically a whole bunch of animations for us, one after another, and they're going to be deleted upon the explosion finishing. Next, we want to actually load the texture. That's done in load content. We want to say explosion texture equals content.load explosion. Note that over here it is named explosion.png, which is how I can get away with just saying content.load explosion, because we've already got the assets loaded up from before. So just like we did with projectiles, remember with projectiles we added projectiles over time. Also with enemies, we added enemies over time. We want to do the same kind of thing with explosions. So we're going to make a new method called add explosion. So it's going to be a private void add explosion. It's going to take a vector2 position, which is where that explosion is going to occur. It's also going to create a new animation in place where that position happens. And then it's going to initialize the explosion with the texture, the position, the size of the explosion, and then a few other parameters to help us out, like the alpha texturing and things like that. And we're going to add the explosion to the explosions list so that it can be cleared out later. So the question is, when do we actually call add explosion? Well, that's kind of the trick. What you want to do is you want to find some place that is actually responsible and knows when an enemy has been destroyed. So here we have enemies.health equaling minus equaling projectiles.damage. That's kind of getting close, but I want there's the player health. What I probably want is where these things are marked to false. So if you scan through the code, here is where they are marked to false. And inside of here, when they're marked to false, this is where we're going to want to create that explosion. So we're going to say if not active and health is less than 0, then if enemy's health is less than 0, that's just the check for if enemy's I.health is less than 0, then add an explosion in that spot, and we give it the position to give that explosion off. Now again, just like explosions, and enemies for that matter, we want to update these on a constant basis. So I'm going to put my update, and notice I've been keeping kind of like add enemy, update enemies, add projectile, update projectile. I'm going to do add explosion, and then I'm going to do update explosions. And the update explosions is going to be the thing that's responsible for going through the list of explosions and determining if they're no longer active and then removing them. So we write a for loop, a typical for loop, int I equals explosions.count minus 1. So we're going to go backwards down the list as long as I is greater than or equal to 0. We're going to update each one. In doing so, remember that explosions of I is actually an animation. And that's going to call update animation, which, by the way, we've already written this to account for the elapsed time and frame time counters here that update to the correct animation. So that's already done for us because we're, by virtue of the fact we're calling it here. And then over time, if they become inactive, then we can remove them. And I am going to want to update these. Somewhere probably after we update the projectiles would be a good time to update the explosions. And the next step is I need to draw these. So I'm going to go ahead and add, here's the draw method that I'm going to add basically underneath the draw projectiles. So for int I equals 0, I less than explosions.count, I plus plus, and then basically that goes through the entire list of explosions and draws each one. Okay, now I should be able to just run the game and see this working. So here we go, and we are blowing things up, and it's great fun. Woohoo! Alright, so we are, feels a little bit better already, just to see the explosions on the screen. So the next thing we're going to do is add sound, because sound is a crucial element of game design, as you all know, so or as you might imagine. So that'll be the next thing we do in the next video. And for this video, we are complete, and you've got a game with explosions. So see you next time.